So welcome once again to another fantastic tutorial. Uh, we are going to be demystifying some concept on function, which has to do with composite function. Now, remember, if you are familiar with functions, we write functions in this way, right? Good. And we call it f of x, right? This should not be mistaken to be multiplication, right? Because as we go further to composite function, now composite functions, right? You'll be seeing some notations like f of g. Now, it's the same thing as just saying f of g, right? Now, but also g is the function of x. So this and this, they are the same, right? Because this is f of g. Now, this is of x, right? So you can see us writing this notation, they are all the same. So you should not get confused when you see f of g, right, of x is the same thing, f of g of x. Fantastic. Now, remember, in our case, when we're talking about function, you have the input, which normally we call the element in the domain, right? Then you pass it through the function, right? Then you obtain your outputs, right? Your output. So we should always put this in mind that, for instance, if I have my function, if I define my function to be equal to 2x plus 5, right? So f of 2 is just going to be basically 2 into 2, then plus 5. This is 4 plus 5, which is 9. Now, because anywhere I see x, I replace it with 2. That is what this simply means, right? And also, if I have another example, say f of minus 10, right? So instead of x, I'm going to substitute 10 over there. So I have f of minus 10 plus 5. So this is going to give me minus 20 plus 5, which is minus 15. Fantastic. Isn't this wonderful? Now, so when I talk about the composite function, you're talking about having other functions coming into play, right? I have a function, f of x, is given by some function, let's say x plus 1. I'm giving g of x to be equal to, let's say, x squared plus 1, right? Then I now ask you to get f of g, right? What is f of g of x? Now, this is the same thing as saying f of g of x. So it's very straightforward. It's very straightforward. So we have, first of all, I have my f. I will go to f, right? Whenever I see x, I'm going to substitute g of x. How cool is that, right? So I'm going to f. Whenever I see x, I'm going to substitute g of x. Is that also? So g of x is like having a function, right? So I'm coming to f of x. So I have, instead of putting x, I have g of x. So I have x squared plus 1, which is for this x, then plus 1. If I evaluate this, I'm going to get x squared plus 2. Remember, now, if I want to get g of f of x, the same approach, the same idea, I will go to my g of x. Whenever I see x, I'm going to substitute f of x. So this is my g of x. I have x over here. I'm going to substitute f of x because it simply means g of f of x. So I'm taking f of x as though it were to be my x. So I'm substituting it here. So my g of x was x squared. And instead of x, I'm going to put the whole of f of x. My f of x is x plus 1. So I have x plus 1 all squared, which is this, then plus 1, plus 1. So I'm going to do the algebra here. I'm going to get x squared plus, because this simply means x plus 1 and x plus 1. So if you do this correctly, you're going to get plus 2x, then plus 1, plus 1. Then we're going to get x squared plus 2x plus 2. Isn't that cool? It's fantastic. So that is how you evaluate composite functions, right? So let me see if we can get more example on composite function so that we can deal with it and you have nothing to worry about. Now you have, for instance, you have f of x is given, f of x is given to be 4x plus 3, and you have g of x is given to be x minus 2. Now, how can I obtain f of g of 5, right? This is clear. Let me get g of 5 first. So what is g of 5? I'm going to go to g and substitute 5 for x. So this is g, x here. I'll put 5 minus 2, which is going to give me 3. Then what we now have is the same thing as saying f of g of 5, which we have gotten to be 3. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? So I'm going to, f of x, I'm going to substitute it. So f of 3, f of g of 5 is the same thing as substitute the value here for x. So I have 4 here into 3 plus 3, right? So I'm going to get here 12, then plus 3, which is 15. You can check to verify. Fantastic. So I can have so many other examples over here. For instance, I have an example where we have if f of x is the same thing as 6x squared, and we have our g of x, right? It's the same thing as 14x plus, let's say 4, for instance. Then what is g of f of x, right? So what is g of f of x? I told you it's the same thing as g of f of x. Fantastic. So if this is the case, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to go to g of x. Wherever I see x, I'm going to substitute the whole of x. So my g of f of x is going to be what? Clearly, I'm going to have 14. I have x. In this case, I'm going to put the whole of f of x. As simple as that. So I have 6x squared. Good. Then plus 4. Plus 4. Good. All I need to do is to multiply this out. And that is that. Now, let's try and see if we can get f of g of x. I told you it's the same thing as f of g of x. Good. I'm going to go to f of x. Whenever I see x, I'm going to substitute the whole of g of x. Isn't that cool? Isn't that simple? So this algebra is going to be what? 6. My x has now become g of x. What is g of x? Is 14. 14x plus 4 plus 4 all squared. Then I have This is something as 6 into 14x plus 4 multiplied by 14x plus 4. Clearly, you can do this with your calculator, you expand, and then you can find the value. Now, from these two examples, you can clearly see that f of x is not equal to what? G of f of x. Good. You can see that clearly from that particular example over there, right? So let's see if we can get more, if you can get more example, if you can get more example, it will be interesting. So let's look for one more example and we'll call it a day, right? So the example I have over here, sometimes you can have, let's pick this. We have f of x. F of x is equal to 8x, right? Then we have g of x. This is 4x plus 2. Similarly, can you get f of g, right, of x? Can we get this? Very simple. I'll go to my f of x, and where I see x, I'm going to substitute g of x for it. So automatically, I'm going to get 8. Instead of putting x, I'm going to put g of x, which is 4x plus 2. This is pretty simple, right? So we're going to multiply 4 8 times. So 4 multiplied by 8, this should give us what? 4. This should give us 32, right? So I think 32x then plus 16, you can verify. Now, what if they ask you to get f of f? Now, it becomes tricky, but it's simple, right? All I'm saying is f of x, which means I'm going to go to f. Instead of putting x, I'm going to repeat the whole f of x. So I have 8x. Instead of writing x, I'm putting the whole of f of x again. So I have 8x. So it's straightforward. We have 64x. Now, similarly, they can ask you to get g of g, right, of x. So this is the same thing as saying you have g of x. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to g of x, right? My g of x is 4x plus 2, right? So I have 4. And instead of writing x, I'm going to substitute that with the whole of g of x. So the whole of g of x is still 4x plus 2, right? Then I have my plus 2. So I'm going to open this. I have 16x plus 8, then plus 2. So this is going to give me 16x, I think, plus 10. Fantastic. So there is nothing that will give you in this function. If you have, if you like, you have 4 functions coming together, 5 functions coming together. This is the idea, right? So I can ask you over here, what is g of f? Now, instead of x, I'm going to ask you of, let's say, 2. Good. Now, I'm going to do g of x first. So g of x, g of f of x is what? I'm going to do g of x. Whenever I see x, I'm going to put f of x. So this is going to be 4 into, instead of putting just x, I'm putting f of x. So f of x is what? 8x. So I have 8x, right? Then plus 2. This is 16. Is it 16? This is supposed to be, I think, 32. Good. 32 x then plus 2. Good. So uh, I have 32 plus what? Plus 2. But our question here is not just to give us what is 32 plus 2, right? 32x plus 2. Rather, our question here is what is of f of what? Of 2. So I'm going to substitute 32 into 2 plus 2. Isn't that cool? Isn't that fantastic? Right? So it's just that simple, right? So we can always get things done easily, right? So at every point in time t, you can get things done easily. So you get that. Is there any other question you may be asked on composite function? Nevertheless, they are all straightforward, right? Just remember f of x, right? So if I ask you f of g of x, simply put, this is the same as f of g of x. This should not be, don't think this is multiplication. You should always bear in mind, this is not multiplication, but you read as f of g of x. Good. Now, if you have some value from this video, if you're getting some insight, you should please share this video and please subscribe to this video, right? So it's encouraged me to do more. If you have any question, put it down in the comment section below. Just put the topic. By the next 48 to 72 hours, I'm going to do a video on that, and I'm going to upload it right here on this channel, or I'll send it to you personally. Thanks for watching this video. See you in the next video.